Hi, ninth graders. Welcome back to our next video. This one is going to be about historical context today. So please take a second in your guided notes to write the lesson title, which is historical context, as well as our learning objective, which is I will be able to identify and explain key elements of historical context in order to analyze and accurately contextualize historical events. And our aim question for today is, how can we accurately identify and describe the setting in which a historical event takes place? So, for your warm up, which I'm sure you've already done with your class, we'll just touch on it really briefly. I'm sure we've all watched some sort of show on TV, on Netflix, on something where they start off with a previously on piece, right? Like, here's what you missed last time, or previously on, blah, 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 right? What is the point of having this at the start of your episode? It's to give you that background information, right? Things that you need to know before you watch the episode that you're about to watch. What did maybe you not pay attention to in the last episode that was really important? What's going to help you better understand what this episode is going to show you? So here's an example from the TV show Avatar, which if you're not familiar, it's one of my favorites. It's really great. But here's a previously on, and let's just read through and see what they say. It says, Katara and Sokka's father leaves to go to the North Pole, leaving Aang to be trained in waterbending by Katara, who has now become his teacher. Meanwhile, Uncle Iroh encourages Zuko to take a rest, and Zuko's father tasks Azula, Zuko's sister, with a mission, right? So this point of this previously on is to show you what's going on with everybody at the time of this next episode. What are people doing? What's happened recently? What is going to influence things that are going to happen, right? So I might be thinking about, well, what's going to happen now that Aang and Katara are going to be working together? Or what's the mission that Azula is going to be taking on, right? These are kind of things that I would need to know beforehand. So how does this play into our study of history? Where does this previously on play in? Well, in history, we call this idea historical context. And you can almost think of it like a roadmap, right? If you're driving in your car and there are certain stops that you have to hit, historical context gives us that roadmap of historical events that figure out how did we get to this point, right? What's happened? Who's involved? Why did it happen? When did it happen? So that we can figure out what's going on with the situation in front of us, right? So I'm going to do a quick model for you. As I model this, I want you to take notes about what steps am I taking to do my historical context. And then I also want you to make sure that you are writing down the example that I'm going to show you in a minute. So these are two images that we're going to try and figure out if we can establish the historical context. So I notice there are adults over here, and it says, please wear a face mask before entering, and there's a sign with a mask. And then I also notice some students, and they are all also wearing masks, and they look like they're in a classroom, right? When I am doing historical context, the first thing I want to do is establish 6 different things, okay? And they're my 5 W's plus an H, right? Who was involved? Who's around? What was going on at the time? When did this happen? Where did this happen? Why was this happening? And how did this happen? So now if I'm looking at these pictures, I'm already brainstorming a few things. Okay, who was involved? I see adults, but I also see students, right? And I know that this was something that was happening with students, especially coming back to school, right? Like students were really impacted by COVID. Next, what was going on at the time? Well, I kind of just said it, right? The COVID-19 pandemic is happening at this time, and that's definitely influencing what we're seeing here in these images. People are trying not to get sick, so on and so forth. We know that that was a global thing. When did this happen? I know it started around 2020, right? That's when it really started, and we're still dealing with COVID now, but not as much as when these photos were probably taken. Where did this happen? I know the COVID-19 pandemic was global. However, I'm going to make an inference based off the language and what I'm seeing here that these photos were probably taken in the United States. Why was this happening? Well, I know that people were wearing masks because they wanted to prevent the spread of the virus, right? When you wear a mask, sometimes when you're talking, you might have saliva or bacteria that goes into the air. And to wear a mask was to prevent the spread of that virus into the air, right? And lastly, how did this happen? Well, wearing the mask will prevent the spread because it's trapping those viral proteins from spreading out to other people. Okay, so I brainstormed all of these things, but that's not really historical context, right? If I looked at my previous examples, it looks like a paragraph. So I need to put this together into a paragraph. So here's my paragraph, and you want to make sure that you copy this down into your notes and the annotations that we are about to make on it. So it says, during the COVID-19 pandemic, which began in 2020, precautions were taken to ensure students were safe to return back to school throughout the United States. One precaution recommended by the US Center for Disease Control was the wearing of facial masks to limit the spread of the virus. This action, when used correctly, was able to prevent widespread COVID outbreaks at schools when students returned through trapping viral proteins in the masks, right? So it's everything that I just said to you, but putting it into complete sentences so that it really paints a full picture of what caused what we're looking at in these images. So let's make sure I had all 5 of my W's and my 1H, right? So I know that students, that's my who, right? I made sure I included that. The COVID-19 pandemic, that is my what. That's what's going on. My when is 2020. My where is the United States. My why, right? Why is what's going on in the picture happening is to limit the spread of the virus. That's why we're seeing the masks. And last but not least, my how is the trapping the viral proteins. That's how they're preventing the spread, right? Take a second and make sure that you have these annotations in your guided notes as well, because every single time that you're doing historical context, you want to make sure that you have included these 6 things. All right, that is it for today's video. Good luck in your practice. You're going to practice some historical context on your own, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.